We've got the former presidential envoy to Iraq, Ambassador Paul Bremer, on this whole situation. Ambassador, very good to have you. I'm sorry under these circumstances, sir, but, everyone's waiting to see what the president does here, and they're worried that he might dial it back. It wasn't too long ago he was demanding Assad leave, and then he kind of said not necessarily. Is that another potential red line moment for him? I'm referring back to Barack Obama's, if he had proof that the government was using chemical weapons against its own people, that would be a red line moment. Nothing happened. What should we do here?
Well, first, I think we should understand that this shows again that there is no long-term solution in Syria which meets American interests and has Assad staying in power. And there is no, I know the president has spoken, and I think rightly, about the importance of defeating ISIS, but there's basically no way to conclude the fight against ISIS in Syria, which also involves Assad staying in power. So it's very hard to see how the president's stated objectives can be met if he's willing to keep Assad in power. I don't think that that's going to work.
If you can educate me, Ambassador, as you often do, these areas that Assad hits, he always and his people come back and say, these are ISIS strongholds. I am targeting them, and sometimes their collateral damage is kids die. But that's what we're doing, and that is what you in the United States want us to be doing. You say what?
Well, first of all, I think it's obscene to suggest, as your sort of summary might have suggested, that we would look the other way if Assad were using chemical weapons if he were using them against ISIS. That's simply not the case. The Russians are implicated in this because, after all, Assad, by using chemical weapons, is violating the agreement that the previous administration, working with the Russians, did with Assad, where he promised to give up his chemical weapons, which he obviously hasn't done.
He keeps saying, Ambassador, that he's not, and he keeps coming back to that. I bomb armaments and positions where chemical weapons are stored. Once I bomb them, the chemical weapons are unleashed, and it's not my doing. It's what was there that I attacked. And what do you think of that?
I think it's nonsense. First of all, if you accept that the chemical weapons were on the ground and were inadvertently bombed, whose chemical weapons were they? And if they were the Syrian government's chemical weapons, they surely knew where they were. So this is just a shadow game he's playing.
All right, so now the question then becomes, what do we do? Nikki Haley, our ambassador to the UN, obviously wants to lead a global effort to condemn this. This is from a few minutes ago. Nikki Haley, I want you to respond to this, sir.
When the United Nations consistently fails in its duty to act collectively, there are times in the life of states that we are compelled to take our own action. For the sake of the victims, I hope the rest of the Council is finally willing to do the same.
But the rest of the Council isn't, right? Led by Russia, not at all inclined to do that. So what do we do?
Well, Ambassador Haley has correctly put her finger on the key problem, which is the credibility of all of these resolutions that the Security Council passes for years and years, and nothing happens. We have a very unfortunate experience with the League of Nations, which passed a lot of resolutions in the 1930s trying to stop aggression in various places like Abyssinia in those days, and it had no effect, and in the end the entire international system under the League collapsed. So there's a lot at stake at the UN. She is right to underline that it has a credibility problem. I frankly don't think the UN Security Council can do much to restrain Mr. Assad. He's not afraid of them.
Ambassador, you mentioned aggression. I'm reminded of that line. I'm getting it not exactly word for word from Winston Churchill. Sometimes the only response is aggression with aggressors. And I'm thinking in a modern day, the comparison with Assad, even in North Korea. But that next step is something that few people really welcome or want. And those leaders in those countries know that and keep doing what they do.
Churchill had an even more precise statement relevant to this. He said, it will often be shown that the easy, moderate course leads directly to the bullseye of disaster. In other words, at a certain point, as Ambassador Haley suggested, individual nations are going to have to strap up and get ready for some tough action.
So when Rex Tillerson, our Secretary of State, was talking specifically about North Korea and South Korea last week, and again in response to this latest missile firing off the coast in the Korean Peninsula. He had very little to say today outside of that it was noted, which seemed to telegraph to some that the administration was set to do something. What?
Well, I mean, I'm not part of the administration, so I don't know. I think that the North Korean situation, the Syrian situation is an immediate tactical question. The North Korean missile program is a strategic threat to the United States, and I'm sure will be on the discussion that and President Trump has with the Chinese leader Xi at the end of the week. I think the president needs to make very clear to the Chinese, he can do it in private and shouldn't talk about it publicly, but that it is completely unacceptable to any American government that a government like the North Koreans should have the capability of launching a military missile against American territory, which is what the North Koreans appear to be trying to do. He's got to draw a very clear red line on that. I would keep it private, but I think he needs to make very clear to the Chinese that's unacceptable.
Other presidents have tried to work the China means to which you triangulate this or whatever with little success. So what would change here?
Well, the other administrations, this process of the North Korean nuclearization started after an ill-considered agreement by the Clinton administration in 1994, which was followed by desultory talks by both the Clinton and Bush administrations and the Obama administration. At a certain point, as you quoted Churchill, the aggressors have to be met with aggression. I don't know whether we're there yet, but I do know that I think it would be a threat to vital American interests if we allowed the North Koreans to develop an intercontinental ballistic missile, which is what they're aiming for, they say they are, which could bring a nuclear weapon to American territory.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Good to be with you.